In 1908, at the Prieur in Fontainebleau, George Gurdjieff stood before a woman in despair. She had lost everything: husband, children, fortune, and begged him to explain why God had allowed so much suffering in her life. Gurdjieff looked into her eyes in silence for long minutes. Then he said something that would forever change not only her life, but the understanding of thousands of people about the true purpose of human existence. "You asked to go through this before you were born," Gurdjieff said, with a certainty that chilled the blood of everyone present. "Your soul chose every suffering, every loss, every moment of agony, because it knew that only through this specific experience could you awaken to who you truly are." In that moment, the woman not only stopped crying, she began to understand something impossible. Something Gurdjieff had discovered during his journeys through the most hidden corners of the world. A truth so deep it challenges everything we believe about destiny, free will, and the purpose of life. This is the story of how Gurdjieff discovered that our greatest tragedies are, in fact, our greatest opportunities for spiritual evolution. And how he learned that every soul meticulously plans its sufferings before incarnating, because it knows that only through direct experience of the impossible can we transcend our mechanical nature. Today, we dive into Gurdjieff's most transformative discovery, a revelation he reserved only for his most advanced students, and one that might completely shift your relationship with everything you consider problems in your life. Gurdjieff's obsession with the mystery of human suffering began when he was just 12 years old. In his hometown of Alexandropol, he witnessed something deeply disturbing: a wealthy man who lost everything in a single night, and instead of falling into despair, began smiling in a way Gurdjieff had never seen before. It was as if that man had found a treasure at the very moment he lost everything, Gurdjieff would recall decades later. His eyes shone with a kind of understanding I knew I had to discover. That image haunted him throughout his youth. Why do some people collapse under adversity, while others seem to bloom? Why does suffering destroy some and awaken others? During his travels with the seekers of truth through Central Asia, Gurdjieff began to find clues. In a hidden monastery in the Hindu Kush, a Tibetan Lama told him something that made him question everything he believed about cause and effect. "Young seeker," the Lama said, his eyes piercing Gurdjieff's soul, "you think things happen to you. But the truth is, you happen to things. Every experience you live was carefully chosen by a part of you that exists beyond time and space." Gurdjieff didn't understand at first. How could anyone choose suffering? How could a person deliberately select tragedy, loss, pain? It was during a brutal winter night in the Gobi Desert that he began to understand. His companions were dying from cold and hunger, and Gurdjieff was about to give up, when something extraordinary happened. In that moment of absolute despair, a deeper part of his consciousness emerged, a part that watched his suffering with scientific curiosity, as if observing a fascinating experiment. "It was then," Gurdjieff would later write, "that I understood there were two parts within me, one that suffered and one that had chosen to suffer. And the part that had chosen was learning something impossible to learn any other way." That realization pushed him to seek even more intensely. He needed to find masters who understood the hidden mechanics behind the most extreme human experiences. The answer came when he met the teacher he would later call the instructor. It was 1895, and Gurdjieff had reached a secret monastery in the mountains of Afghanistan, after months of dangerous travel. The teacher was a man of ageless appearance, with eyes that seemed to contain centuries of wisdom. When Gurdjieff shared his obsession with the mystery of suffering, the man smiled. "Sit down," the teacher said, "and I will show you something very few humans have ever understood. You want to know why we suffer? I will show you why we choose to suffer." What followed defied everything Gurdjieff believed about reality. The teacher led him into an expanded state of consciousness using techniques Gurdjieff had never experienced. In that state, Gurdjieff had a vision that shook him to his core. He saw himself before he was born, in a plane of existence where time and space worked entirely differently. "I stood before a council of luminous beings," Gurdjieff would later describe, "and I myself was one of those beings. Together, we were planning my next incarnation with the precision of cosmic architects." In the vision, Gurdjieff saw how his soul, along with others that would be important in his life, was literally designing the experiences he would live. Every hardship, every loss, every moment of suffering was carefully calibrated to create exactly the growth opportunities his consciousness needed. "That's when I understood something terrifying," Gurdjieff wrote. We are not victims of fate. We are co-creators of our own journey of awakening. And our pre-incarnate wisdom is infinitely greater than our limited human understanding. When the vision ended, the teacher said, "Now you understand, young seeker. Every tear you shed was approved by you before birth. Every moment of agony was planned by your higher wisdom. And when you truly understand this, suffering transforms into something else entirely." "What does it become?" Gurdjieff asked. "Fuel for awakening," the teacher replied. "Raw material for the construction of higher consciousness." But intellectual understanding was only the beginning. The teacher knew Gurdjieff had to experience this truth viscerally to truly internalize it. "Now," he said, "you will go through the supreme test. You will consciously relive the planning of your current incarnation, and understand why your soul specifically chose the most difficult experiences of your life." What followed was the most intense experience Gurdjieff had ever known. Using ancient techniques passed down from a secret lineage of mystics, he entered a state of consciousness that allowed him to access the memory of his soul. He saw himself again before birth, this time with crystal clarity. He could feel the infinite compassion his soul had for his future human personality. He could see how every difficult experience had been chosen with unconditional love. "I saw how my soul planned the early death of my father," Gurdjieff would later report, "because it knew that only through that specific loss would I develop the inner strength necessary for my future mission. He saw how his soul orchestrated betrayals, because it knew they would teach him discernment and self-trust in a way no positive experience could. Even more astonishing, he saw how his soul chose to be born in a specific era, in a specific country, to specific parents, because all these factors were necessary to create the conditions that would allow for his awakening. There are no accidents in life," Gurdjieff realized. "There is only a plan so wise and complex that the human mind cannot grasp it while living inside the experience." Then came the most shocking revelation. Gurdjieff saw that he had not only planned his own experiences, he had collaborated with other souls to create situations that allowed for mutual growth. "The people who hurt me most were souls who loved me enough to play difficult roles," he would later explain. "And I had agreed to hurt others, not out of cruelty, but out of love, because I knew they needed that experience to awaken." This understanding overwhelmed him. He wept uncontrollably, not from sorrow, but from absolute gratitude. The teacher watched in silence. He knew Gurdjieff had crossed a threshold with no return. In the following months, Gurdjieff went through a profound integration process. He began to see everyone he encountered as a brave soul who had chosen specific experiences for their evolution. And he began to understand his role in this cosmic drama. "I realized why certain people were drawn to me," he wrote. "Their souls recognized that I had developed the capacity to help them understand the hidden purpose behind their suffering. But with this understanding came immense responsibility." Gurdjieff realized he could not simply say, "You chose this." First, he had to help people develop the inner strength to handle that truth. "Raw truth can destroy someone who isn't ready," he observed. "It's like giving a bomb to a child." That's why I had to develop methods that would allow people to discover this truth gradually, through their own experience. That's how Gurdjieff's unique methods were born. Every exercise, every uncomfortable situation he created for his students, each one was designed to help them see the hidden purpose behind their difficulties. He began to realize that the most spiritually advanced people were those who had suffered the most, not despite their suffering, but because of it. They had used their deepest pain as fuel for awakening. "I met saints forged by betrayal. Sages awakened by the loss of everything they loved. Masters who found God the moment they lost their faith." Suffering, he discovered, isn't an obstacle to evolution. It is the most efficient method for accelerating consciousness. "You can meditate for decades and make little progress," Gurdjieff said. "But throw that same person into a crisis, and they may awaken in weeks." Armed with this understanding, Gurdjieff returned to the West. At the Prieur, he began applying this revolutionary approach with his students. Catherine Mansfield, the famous writer who arrived dying of tuberculosis, was among the first to experience it. When she asked why she was dying so young, Gurdjieff didn't offer cheap comfort or abstract philosophy. Instead, he guided her through self-investigation, until she realized her illness wasn't a punishment, but a tool her soul had chosen to accelerate her spiritual growth in a single lifetime. "My disease is my greatest teacher," she wrote in her final letters. Each painful breath is an opportunity to learn something about life that healthy people may never discover. Her transformation was so profound that she spent her final months not in despair, but in gratitude, radiating peace and clarity. Another student, a wealthy man who had lost everything, arrived on the verge of suicide. Gurdjieff didn't comfort him. He helped him see that his soul had orchestrated the loss to teach him something he could never learn in safety. At first, the man resisted. But when he finally accessed the perspective of his soul, a miraculous change occurred. He stopped lamenting and began embracing his challenge as a divine opportunity. The difference, Gurdjieff said, is that before, he resisted the experience. Now, he collaborated with it. And when you collaborate with your experience instead of resisting it, it transforms. Every person drawn to Gurdjieff wasn't there by accident. Their souls knew it was time to discover the hidden meaning of their suffering. And that's the core of Gurdjieff's final teaching, not a philosophical curiosity, but a practical tool for transformation. When you realize that your soul chose your hardest experiences out of love, everything changes. Life becomes a spiritual curriculum, perfectly designed for your evolution. Instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" you begin to ask, "What is my soul trying to teach me through this?" You move from victim to seeker to co-creator. And suffering becomes fuel. Gurdjieff taught that there are 3 stages in our relationship with suffering. First, you are a victim. Life happens to you. You react with resistance. Second, you understand intellectually that you can grow from your experiences. Third, you understand viscerally that you chose your experiences. You become a conscious collaborator in your own evolution. And at this stage, suffering doesn't vanish, it transforms. It becomes fuel for awakening. This is the difference between people destroyed by hardship and people transformed by it. It's not about easier lives, it's about deeper understanding. Gurdjieff's final message is both challenging and liberating. You are not a random victim in a chaotic universe. You are a conscious participant in a carefully orchestrated evolution, designed by your own higher wisdom. Every person you meet, every situation you face, every hardship you endure, was drawn to you on some level because it holds exactly what you need for your next evolutionary step. When you truly understand this, Gurdjieff said, you are no longer a prisoner of your circumstances. You become an artist of your own transformation. And in that moment, you awaken to who you truly are. Not a human personality suffering randomly, but an immortal soul, using temporary experiences to evolve consciously toward divinity. You asked for this before you were born. And when you finally accept this truth with gratitude, your entire life transforms. From a prison into a laboratory for conscious awakening.